Hey guys, Will here. So it's been a couple of months now since we moved into our new studio space that we shared with you, and we've had a bit of time to settle in and optimize a few things. So I wanted to spend some time today taking you on a bit of an updated tour of the whole setup basically, and a lot of little technical details that we didn't really cover in the previous studio tour. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that we've come across over the last couple of years since we set up this rig initially. We're gonna take you through all that stuff today so that you get a better idea of exactly how we do things here at Boosted Media. So let's start off with what I'm sure you guys are most interested in, the triple 65-inch 4K sim rig. Now, we originally built this rig, what was it, more than 2 years ago now. It was back in October, November, December of 2021. And it's been through a number of revisions since then just to sort of optimize things and get things running as best as they can possibly be with the technology at least that we have available. So you'll remember back when we originally built it, it was running off a system that was basically just a rig on a test bench like this. This is actually the new test system that we're running at the moment. I'm just doing some optimization with overclocking and things like that. So we've got the old 3090 that we were previously running on the sim rig plugged into that at the moment, and we will be transplanting this motherboard and CPU. This is a ASUS ROG Maximus Z790 motherboard. We're running the 690 at the moment with the 12900K in the actual rig, but yeah, we'll be putting the 13900 with the Z790 in the rig as soon as I get the opportunity to do so and as soon as I've finished all the optimization. But in terms of the build itself, you guys have seen this before, so we won't spend a whole bunch of time here. This is essentially a workshop trolley from a car shop here in Australia, Super Cheap Auto, and I basically, over the course of a number of months, built the entire rig into this. So the top layer is what runs the sim rig. We've got the 12900K, as I said, 64 gig of RAM in there, and then the 4090. Now, I haven't water cooled the 4090 to date simply because the massive coolers that they put on these GPUs from stock are actually overrated for the actual thermal dissipation that's required. So this only gets up to around sort of 65, 70 degrees most of the time, which isn't, you know, a whole lot hotter than what we would be getting with water cooling anyway. So I just haven't really felt the need. You might notice in there, we are still running the original NVIDIA adapter cable that quite a few people had problems with on the internet. I have actually got a replacement cable to swap that out with when we put the new motherboard in there as well that I got from Cable Mod. But yeah, haven't had any problems with that to date. It's all good. So I should explain that the top level here is what's running the sim rig specifically. So if we come around here, we've got the three 65-inch 4K displays. We've got obviously the wheelbase, the pedals, the steering wheel, the motion platform that we'll take you through all the details on in just a minute. All of that stuff is all being run by the top level. And then the bottom level is what's actually responsible for capturing video and capturing audio. So if we come back around here again, we've got the Go XLR, which is like a little audio routing tool and mixing desk. So that's plugged into the sim PC. So that captures or takes the audio out of the game, takes the microphone input. You can actually see that going there at the moment. We've got a couple of different inputs there that we can use for various different channels, and that allows us to separate the audio. And then we go up to the fourth screen here, which is actually connected to the second PC. And you can see I've got an old version of OBS running there because I use NDI to actually get video from the sim PC across to the other PC through the network. We'll talk about networking in just a minute too. So that is the display for the capture PC. And then basically what that does, the reason we do it that way is because it offloads a lot of the unnecessary processing onto a different machine. So we're not putting a parasitic load on the sim PC. Obviously we want to have as many frames as we possibly can on that, and removing as much processing from that as possible is the best way that we've found to do that. So that is the reason why we've got this crazy sort of dual system going on here. The bottom system is a 8700K, and actually no, it's an 8086K processor. So it's a number of years old now. It's a Z390 ASUS ROG motherboard, and there's a 2080 Ti running in there. Now, the system is completely overkill for what it's actually being used for, but that was the hardware that I happened to have available at the time that we built it, so that's what I used in there. But I don't think that's going to need to be upgraded for a very long time. So let's go back around to the sim rig now, and I'll run you through the hardware that we're actually running on. This is another question we get asked a lot is, you know, what hardware are we actually running on the sim rig here? So starting off with the massive 65-inch displays here, the first thing you need to understand is that these aren't TVs. A lot of people say, what TVs are you running? They're actually big format gaming displays. So they're HP Omen Imperium X gaming displays. They're 144 hertz with G-Sync as well. So that's actually quite useful. You can imagine, even with the high-end system that we're running there, running this kind of resolution, we're running 11,520 by 2160 pixels, so triple 4K resolution. So you can imagine it's quite hard to run that at 144 frames per second. So G-Sync actually does work very well. Now, another big advantage that we found with these particular screens is that they have display ports too, because most modern graphics cards, unfortunately these days, and we might see in the next generation, it might switch back to HDMI 2.1 or something like that. But at the moment, the graphics cards still have display ports on them, and usually only one or maybe two HDMI ports. So being able to run display port cables directly across from the displays to the PC has been really advantageous. There's a lot of issues with running adaptive sync if you're using adapters. A lot of people I've seen have run into issues like that. So I have been keeping a close eye on display technology, particularly in the last 6 months. We've seen a lot of larger gaming displays coming out. We actually have one I'll show you in a minute that we're going to be testing very soon. But yeah, I just haven't really found anything that I think would be a direct replacement for these yet. So that's the reason we're still running these. Unfortunately, they are discontinued. They haven't been available for quite some time now, so you can't really buy them anymore. But yeah, at the moment at least, they still appear to be the best thing to suit our very specific needs. And we've talked before about the fact that I would never recommend that anybody build a system like this unless it was for content creation. Obviously, our needs here are very specific. And you know, essentially this is a business tool. We use it to produce all of our hyper-realistic sim racing videos that you guys see on the channel. So in terms of other hardware that we're running here, we've got a SimLabs P1X cockpit, same cockpit that I've been running for a number of years now. We've put a lot of extra appendages and things on it over time, but it's stood up very well. It's never had any issues with creaking. And look, to be honest with you guys, I've never even had to go around it and tighten anything up. It's just really stood the test of time very, very well. Down the bottom there, while Tom's down there with the camera too, you'll see the D-Box G3 system. Now you might be wondering why we're still running the G3 when we have the G5. We reviewed that a number of months ago now. Look, this just suits our needs a little bit better than the G5 does. The feedback that you get through it is exactly the same between the two systems, but this has just got a slightly smaller footprint. It does have the two big control boxes, but they integrate quite nicely underneath this little plate that's sitting on the base there. So yeah, we just didn't really see the need to change over from the G3 to the G5. While we're down there as well, you can see the same old wind simulation system that we were running before. We have a DIY video that I put together a number of years ago on that. Not a huge amount of airflow that comes out of it, but it's enough to sort of give you the sensation of air movement. And we talked in that video about, you know, what the advantages of that are. One question that we get a lot is, why would you want to have wind simulation if you're driving a closed cabin car? And it's more just sort of about tricking your brain. It gives your brain the sensation of movement, even though it doesn't necessarily feel all that realistic, for example. So yeah, it actually works really well. And that's one of my favorite things on the rig. We're still running the Acertec Invicta pedals. Been really happy with them. Haven't really felt the need to change them. They suit my driving style extremely well. We have reviewed a number of really nice pedals recently, particularly the VRS pedals. I was really impressed with them. Husqvarna Ultimate Plus pedals have been really good too. We ran them for a while on the rig, but yeah, just been really happy with the Acertec Invictus, so we're still running those. At the moment, we've got the Grid by SimLab Porsche 911 RSR wheel installed on here, but that's something that we swap out depending on what we're driving. If you have a look over here, got another one of these workshop trolleys that's got, say, not all of the rims that we have here, but the ones that I use most frequently on the rig. So we've got some, I've been using the GSI and the CSX3 quite a bit recently. When I'm doing GT3 stuff, I often use the Cube Controls F Pro. But yeah, it just depends on what I'm driving. I don't really have a favorite wheel at the moment. It's purely just down to what's suiting what I'm driving the best. So back over to the rig again. We're still running the Lusso Motors bucket seat that we had custom made a number of years ago now with our Boosted Media logo on the back here. It's not the most comfortable looking thing in the world, but I actually find it very, very comfortable. As I mentioned in a recent video, I've actually put on quite a bit of weight since we originally bought this. I'm doing my best to lose it again at the moment, but it has been very, very comfortable, even with my increased body weight. So yeah, no complaints about the seat whatsoever. And it is very light as well, which does make a bit of a difference when it comes to motion and things like that. Obviously, the less weight that you have in the rig, the more responsive it's going to be overall, and the less load you're putting on those actuators. So that's been really good too, and it lets us sit nice and low in the rig too. One of the things that we talked about in some previous videos is the fact that the seating position in terms of height is very, very sensitive with this particular setup. If you're not in exactly the right spot, everything starts to bend on the screens. So yeah, having this nice and low works really, really well. Then we've got the SimiCube 2 Ultimate sitting on here still. Now, a lot of people might be wondering why are we still running this when I said that the Acertec Invicta wheelbase has slightly better force feedback, simply just because it's more practical to have on here at the moment. You can see I've got it mounted from the bottom, which means that it kind of disappears in the videos. You don't really see it behind the wheel at all. The Acertec one stands out a lot more on the rig, so we'd need to sort of mask it off a little bit more. And also just in terms of practicality, we've got the Zero Play Quick Release that we run on the SimCube 2 Ultimate, and I've got the wheel side adapters for every single wheel that we use regularly at least. If I was to swap it over to the Acertec at the moment, I'd have to unscrew the wheel and screw it onto the other hub that we have all the time. So purely from a practicality point of view, the SimiCube 2 Ultimate just suits my needs a little bit better for the daily driver rig at the moment. Really what's most important with the rig is that it's just, you know, as turnkey as it can possibly be at any given point in time. I always want to be able to just sort of jump in and drive, record a video at the drop of a hat, and it always needs to be functional. So we don't play around with the configuration of this rig too much. You know, what I have on here works well. Just to give you another example as well, I've still got the analog shifter on here that we put on there years ago now. Now, there are a couple of other shifters that we have in our storage, which I actually prefer the feel of to this, but this is just super practical because I can unscrew the stem when I'm driving a car that doesn't have a shifter, and you don't really see it in the video. But then if I want to have something that has a sequential shifter, I can just pop it on again. And if I'm doing something that has an H pattern, then I go grab my other shifters to put on there. But yeah, just little things like that from a practicality sense just makes sense. So the point is that, you know, what we're running on the daily driver rig isn't necessarily the stuff that I like the most. It's just the stuff that is the most practical for the purpose of what we're trying to achieve here. So then we also have the Asus bezel-free kits on here, which you guys have seen a couple of times previously. So it's 2 per side. You can see what I do is just sort of flip it around, and then I've got a piece of string with a little piece of plastic in the middle there that we pulled through from the back to just kind of fix it in place. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. We experimented with double-sided tape on the edges, but it just kind of created a bit of a smudge there. So that system seems to work the best. And another shout out to Carl Gosling for that idea. He did that on his 55-inch displays, and I thought it was a really good idea. And yeah, we've been running it that way for a little bit over a year now, and it's worked really, really well. But that is how we sort of blend the bezels together. Now, I have experimented with a couple of other systems as well. Some people take the lenses out of old display panels and use those, but I just find that the Asus panels seem to just work a little bit better than any of those other solutions do at the moment. And then behind the rig, to isolate things both acoustically and visually, we have these acoustic panels, which we showed you in the last video, so we won't go into a bunch of detail on those again, but those seem to be standing up really well, and they actually do deaden the room quite a bit acoustically as well. We didn't want to have a completely dead sound in here. We wanted to sort of have that garage vibe. But between this and the other acoustic panels, it's actually working really well. So the other big thing with the sim rig that we've changed since the last video is we just made a couple of little additions to the ambient lighting system too. So if you're not familiar with what that is, we have a full video where we explain exactly what that does. But essentially, what it does is simulate the light coming in from outside the car so that you see the light change on my arms and the steering wheel as I'm driving in the rig as it would be in real life, or as close as we can get it to real life. So we have this gradient strip from Philips Hue. This is all Philips Hue lighting that we use throughout the entire house, in fact. But so that's a gradient strip that kind of adapts depending on what's on the screen. And then I found that although it was working quite well, it just wasn't quite vibrant enough or quite bright enough on my arms in particular. You guys might have noticed a couple of videos that we did after we first moved into the studio, the lighting just wasn't quite as good as it had been previously. So what I did was I grabbed a couple of spare GU10 Philips Hue bulbs that I had kicking around. We just put them in these little bases, and I've got those rigged up now as well. So, so what they do is they just create a brighter spotlight on my hands. And again, they just sort of adapt to whatever is being displayed on the screen. And it all just connects in wirelessly through the network, which I'll show you in just a minute. So while we're on the subject of lighting, something that is really important in a studio space like this one is to have complete control over the lighting. So it doesn't matter what time of the day you're filming. You know, we can be filming something at midnight and it looks exactly the same as it does at midday. So the way we've achieved that is with Philips Hue lighting pretty much. Well, I've got it throughout the entire house, but down in the studio space, we've got 4 of these long 5-meter strips, similar to the gradient strip, but they don't have individual segments that are individually addressable. So the entire strip just changes. So we've got 4 of them, 2 on the car side, 2 on the studio side. And then I've got a bunch of scenes that I have set up through the Hue system. So I can change it to blue. I can change it to red and white, red all over, daytime all over, and whatever else you want. So we can go into the app and change all this depending on what we want. I can dim it or brighten it from here, or just switch it off and on as well. Now this is all Google controlled as well, so I can talk to Google and tell it what I want it to do. If I'm leaving the house as well, it'll automatically detect that I've left and switch everything off. So it's a really, really powerful system. Now I have experimented with quite a few different lighting systems, and I did pay full retail for this system as well. So this isn't any sort of a sponsored ad or anything like that. But one of the things I really like about the Hue systems in particular is that the software integration is really nice. So the software is really clean and easy to use, but they also have these bridge systems. If you come through here just quickly, you can see the little Hue bridge that's sitting next to the router there. So what that does is it allows all the lights to actually connect to that hub, and then it only requires one network connection back to the main network. So what that means is that you're not loading up your network with, I've got, I think 45 separate Hue lights in the house in total, not including the ones above the rig because they're on a separate bridge. And you can imagine if you have all of those devices all connected to your wireless network, it can start to slow things down if you don't have a powerful router. So keeping everything separate like that just seems to make a little bit more sense for me. Now, while we're on the subject of network, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because that's something that I've been working on a lot recently in the studio. So you can see here, we've got the AX6000 Asus ROG router. This is actually in AI mesh mode at the moment. So we did a review of this on the channel recently. Now, being out in rural Australia, we do have a lot of problems with slow internet. So come over to the table now and I want to show you how I've got things set up with this network. I've been putting a lot of time into this recently to try and get it as optimized as I possibly can. So in Australia, we have this wonderful thing called the NBN, or National Broadband System. And out in regional areas like where we are, it can be quite slow. So to put it in perspective, I only get about 40 megabits per second downstream and about 8 or 9 at absolute best upstream. Latency is okay. We get about a 9 millisecond latency back to the main server, and obviously, any other latency adding on top of that. So normally when I'm playing something like iRacing for an overseas server, I usually have a ping of about 233, something like that. Now, there are a lot of wireless systems available that can boost the speed up higher than that. Things like Starlink, for example, but all of those have much higher latency. So what I was finding is when I jumped into an online race, even though my upload and download speeds might be absolutely fine, I was having a lot of latency issues just because of the inherent flaws in wireless systems compared to fixed wide systems. So what we've done is we've configured a bit of a crazy network here. We've got the AXE1600, as I mentioned just before, that's upstairs plugged into my NBN modem. We've got a bit of a server cabinet upstairs, which everything runs through. We don't really need to show you that. So we've got this guy sitting upstairs. That is then linked via a Ethernet backhaul connection, a gigabit connection, down to the AX6000, which you saw down here. So this guy is serving the wireless network down the bottom, but it's all one mesh system. So it's all one big wireless network. That means if I'm transitioning between upstairs and downstairs, everything just kind of works, and we don't have to swap across between different networks. So all the fixed systems like the two PCs that we showed you earlier and my editing PC are all connecting back to this via Ethernet, and then obviously the wireless network is on top of that too. So then with the main router upstairs, there's a couple of important features of this guy that we're making use of here to try and optimize things. And I experimented with even building my own router with pfSense as well, just to fiddle around with things, but I wanted to keep things as simple as I possibly could, and this is actually suiting what we need really, really well. So first thing is it has triple game acceleration. So what that allows you to do is prioritize gaming traffic over everything else, pretty much all the way through the network. So you can imagine the kids might be watching 4K Netflix, Jill might be, watching something else in another room, and I don't want to be telling them, hey, you guys have got to get off the TVs every single time I'm trying to record a race video or something like that. So having the quality of service optimization on this actually works really well, and I've been able to basically just tell it prioritize anything that is gaming related, prioritize anything that's coming from my sim PC or my editing PC, and then everything else works secondary to that. So that's working really well for us. But the main thing that's been an absolute game changer for us here with our crappy NBN connection is the dual WAN functionality that we have here. So there's a bit of a network guide here, and you can see we can actually have a 10 gig or 2.5 gig or both connection to an ISP. We don't have anywhere near those kinds of speeds here in Australia, so that hasn't been really what I've been using this for. But what I've done is, in addition to my NBN connection, which as I mentioned before is about 40 megabit down and about 8 or 9 up, what I've done is get myself a 5G hotspot, and that's just connected to the same data plan as our mobile phones are. So we get about 1.2 terabytes of data a month. And this actually gives me, if I combine it with a giant antenna like this guy, about 800 or 900 megabits per second down and about 70 or 80 up. So it's more than 10 times faster to upload. And that has been absolutely game changing for me trying to upload videos. Oftentimes I'd record a race video and it might take 6 hours to upload the video. So it means I can't release the video on the day that I edit it, which is often very, very frustrating. So what we've been able to do with the router is have a dual WAN system. So basically what it's doing is it's putting anything that I connect to the network via DHCP in a normal fashion through to the NBN router. And then anything that I assign an IP address outside that normal DHCP range, what it does is it points it to this guy. So what I can do is I can point my editing PC to the 5G, get those fast upload and download speeds, and then everybody else is still running off the NBN connection. So that has worked really, really nicely on this. And that means that any activity that's going on upstairs with TVs and things like that doesn't impede on what I'm doing in the sim. But then if I want those fast download speeds, I just switch over to the 5G and everything just works. So yeah, that whole system has worked really well. It's taken a lot of stuffing around and experimenting with different bits of hardware to get there. But yeah, this system has ended up working really, really well. So I'll chuck these down under the table again quickly. And I just want to take you through a couple of other things with regards to how we record videos and lighting and things like that. So let's chuck those down. So you guys would have seen a lot of sweeping shots recently in a lot of our review videos. What we use for that is this little Edelkrone Dolly 1. And this is basically just a little robot. It's got little wheels underneath it that you can see there. And Tom can program this to kind of run around on the table, do all kinds of fancy arcs and things like that. Normally we would run the Sony ZV-1 camera on top of this, which Tom's actually filming this on right now. Yeah, that works really, really well. We had a couple of camera sliders that we were using previously, but yeah, this has just been a really versatile little piece of kit. They aren't cheap. I can't remember how much it costs now. I don't want to even think about it, but yeah, it's been a really versatile thing. And often what we'll do is just put a plank of wood down across 2 chairs or something like that to give us a bit more distance away from the table. And yeah, it's just working really well. In terms of other cameras, if I flip around the back here quickly, we're still running the A7 Mark III as our main camera that I use for all the face-to-cam stuff. And then we're using a Sony Alpha 6600 for a lot of our B-roll stuff. I know a lot of YouTube channels these days are running really crazy high-end camera gear, you know, red 8K cameras and things like that. Look, to be honest, guys, I haven't really found the need to upgrade from these. The only thing that I wish I had that I don't have with this is purely just 60 frames per second 4K. At the moment, these only do 30 frames per second. But other than that, I just don't really see the need to spend the money. The lenses that we have for these work really well. And yeah, they just kind of suit the need. Behind that, you can see a couple of acoustic panels as well. So these are just panels that we built up with some acoustically transparent fabric on the front and then big acoustic bats inside. And we just basically put those on little skateboards so we can move them around. What we basically do is rather than trying to deaden the sound in the entire space, we just kind of create a booth around whatever we're filming. We just wheel those into position, and that's working really well. Again, like I said before, we don't want the sound to be completely dead in here. We want it to have that garage vibe, and yeah, those have worked really well. Now you can see on my right hand side here as well a couple of additional sim rigs. So we've got the Advanced Sim Racing ASR4, which we're actually working on a review of right now. We've been testing that out for, I want to say, probably more than 6 months now. It's proven to be really good so far, but we'll have a review of that up very soon. And then we have our trusty Track Racer TR120, which we've been using for a lot of testing too. So often we'll be testing 2 things at once. We might have one wheelbase on this and another on this one, so we can test back to back. Oftentimes as well, we might be running one pedal set on this rig and another on this one, so we can just quickly switch between them and you know, get a feel for what feels like what without a lot of dead time between the two. So I'll take you into my office quickly too. I should quickly mention this this TV as well. This is the old Samsung TV that I used to use on the sim rig originally, back when I was running the Club Sport Wheelbase 2.5 with my old F1 2018 videos. We're just using this basically for testing stuff, so we can just wheel it around, put it in front of whatever rig we want, and yeah, we're up and running in no time at all. But let's come in my office quickly now, and I'll show you where I edit my, well, this is where I do all my admin work and edit the race videos. Tom actually edits all the review videos on the MacBook Pro, and that's working really well, surprisingly, for a laptop. But yeah, just having that portability works really well for us. But this is my basically editing room here, my admin room. It's a small little office, but it suits me really well. It's nice and quiet, away from the kids and all that stuff too. You can see the PC in here. I'm probably going to swap this out for the 12900K system that's currently running the sim rig, but this is the 11900K that was previously in the sim rig, and 3080 Ti sitting on here. I probably will swap that out for the 3090 once we've swapped all those other bits and pieces out too. But it's a bit crude. I've got my this is my data drive where I store all the videos that I'm working on and editing and stuff down here. And you know, it's messy in here, but it does the job. Yeah, and then we also, you're probably wondering what the hell this display is. This is a brand new LG Ultra Gear 45-inch OLED display that just came in a couple of days ago, actually. So I'm in the process of testing this out at the moment. It's a hard life sometimes testing these things out. I've been playing a bunch of different games, and we'll have a review of this coming up pretty soon, hopefully, as soon as we can get to it. 240 hertz refresh rate on this guy with an OLED panel, and you can see it's got this crazy curve radius here too, which really kind of pulls you into the game. So very cool display, but you'll see more on that very soon. And that is pretty much the tour, guys. So we'll come back out here again, and yeah, I can't. Is it? The car. All right. Okay. You guys saw this already.
I want to see it again.
It does look nice in here. So that's it's a BMW M2 competition 2021 model. It's only got, how many kilometers have we done? Like
That too.
I think it's got just under 2,000 kilometers. I'm genuinely tempted to sell it just because I don't drive it enough, but I do love it and it does look awesome in the videos. But yeah, it's a 2021 M2 competition. It's pretty much stock. I put the carbon fiber lip kit on it, which is a genuine carbon fiber kit. It has an aftermarket PSM dynamic rear duck lip on it as well. But yeah, I love it. I just don't get to drive it as much as I wish I did. It's actually a little bit dirty because I did actually take it out the other weekend. All right, guys. So I think that pretty much covers everything in terms of, yeah, what we're doing, how things work. If you think of any questions at all, if there's anything you want more specifics on than what we've done here, there are a lot of review videos and technical videos on the channel already where we've gone through details of things. But if there's anything you want to know more about, let us know in the comments down below. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again very soon. Bye.